Hi everyone, welcome to today's research-informed defensive lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, use of force expert, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, CEO of Active Self-Protection, Stephanie Widener.
MagTech is the only freedom seed I use on the range. I personally have over 100,000 rounds downrange of MagTech, and it's unbelievably reliable, very accurate, and a great value. Pick some up for your next range trip wherever you shop for range supplies. This one's on the Canary Islands, and this young man who, if you go look at the news stories, man, he looks like just like a college kid soccer player, apparently showed up at the wrong day on the airport, was denied access to get into the airport, and then they found a knife in his carry-on and he lost his mind. So started like waving it around at people. That brings a bunch of cops to the yard. They confront him. Well, he charges one of the cops with his knife and then is running around on the other side with him. You see all these cops here. It's like Keystone cops at this point. He runs back and forth towards the crowd who he is threatened with. Well, they shot at him 5 times. Right there, they finally hit him with one of them, and that one round hit him in the neck, and that proved to be fatal. Thankfully, even though he threatened a whole lot of other people with the knife, nobody else was harmed. None of the officers were hit. Everybody else went home that day. Hey, guess what? The good, sane, sober, moral, prudent ASP t-shirts are back in stock in the web shop. They're in multiple colors. They are super cool. Go hit the link in the description to the web shop and maybe pick one up for yourself. Now, Steph, I know we can all make jokes about how, we understand if you hate TSA and, I'm not saying you should do this. Okay, all right. Those jokes are all made. But also, you and I fly quite a bit. And of course, you've got to show up completely unarmed to the airport, or at the very least, you're going to put it all in your checked baggage and declare it and all that stuff. So going towards the plane, you're not going to have anything on you. But I think this is a good reminder that this dude shows up with knives and junk. So having a plan to defend yourself while unarmed or with environmental weapons is a good mental game to play.
Yeah, and really, I try to, as best practice, have my kind of awareness raised, at least until I'm through security. At least when we're through security, there's at least, the idea that everybody's been searched, and most of the incidents that happen are going to happen outside of security. So that is the place you really need to be most aware. Airports are kind of targets, things like that. So I just try to be a lot more aware, save all of my business, my restroom breaks, anything else I may need to do, and just get through security as quickly as possible to mitigate and reduce the time that I'm kind of in this danger zone. And that, like you say, having some plans to deal with something. Certainly not just standing around watching this.
And certainly also if, some guy's running around threatening people with a knife. Now, I don't know that these people who are here right now have seen that, okay? So I'm not necessarily faulting them, but if you do see a commotion, stay away from it. Like, get out of there. You might be like, well, yeah, but I got to get on my plane. Well, this ends up being somebody threatening people with a knife. So you're not going to be like, oh, excuse me, sir, can you get out of the way so that I can board my aircraft? That ain't how this works, Chief. So you got to be ready to get the heck out of there, especially then. Let's just say you haven't seen all that you haven't seen everything that's going on. But I want to notice here, Steph, all of a sudden, 4 cops show up with their hands on their guns and are going towards the guy who you are looking at. Listen, I know my kids are a little bit older now, but, Steve from Blue's Clues would have looked at that and said, a clue, a clue.
Yeah, just move the other way. And I know that it is human instinct to want to watch and see what's happening, and it's really easy to have your attention kind of hijacked by that, especially if you don't already have a plan what to do. If you see something like this, if your brain has a plan, hey, when I see a commotion, particularly at the airport, which is kind of a place that has been traditionally targeted for attacks and stuff like this over the years, I am going to move away from it. I will read about it on the news later. Even on the other side of security, tempers are often flaring, people are stressed out. You just don't need to be around any commotion that's happening and being in the way. Particularly as the guns start coming out, these people make a heck of a bad backstop for these officers to have to deal with.
Yeah, and you look at our guy here who's at the bottom, who's just rolling his rolling bags. He's just looking to get on an airplane. It's just a regular day. Which is why we always say pay attention, right? Looking, condition yellow, curious about your world, and then when something's out of place, you've got to be willing to radically accept reality. Is that part of self-defense is that radical acceptance of what really is happening in front of me rather than the disbelief of, nah, what the heck is happening? Now, of course, these officers, they see the guy that they know that they are after. And I do want to note here, I don't know why this young man snapped. All the reports that I read that I've got linked in the description said that he was just a regular college kid who just lost his mind that day.
I don't honestly care in terms of, I don't have to diagnose him. I don't have to do all that stuff right now. What I got to do is protect myself right now from an imminent threat. And I want to note here that our officers walk into this bravery, 100% bravery. They're walking in when everybody else should be running out. Kudos to them for that. Now, as our guy is going to get closer to them, we actually are going to see here a really, really excellent example of the Tueller principle. And remember, Dennis Tueller never said, draw your gun faster, right? So that's what a lot of people call the 21-foot rule. And that purpose of that isn't, well, somebody with a knife is deadly to you at 21 feet. It's that he can cover 21 feet in the 1.5 seconds it takes an officer to get his gun out of his holster and get a shot on target. So the answer to that is to move your feet. And you know, the funny part though, Steph, is an awful lot of our firearms training is stationary. And I think a lot of times standing and delivering works, but knowing how to move your feet when you are drawing a gun, that's a good skill to have for real life.
Yeah, and I think these officers do a really good job with a real mess as he is like running full speed in and out and between all of them to try to find a good and decent safe shot. They move actually. Now we do see the one guy fall down and we see that fairly regular, but for the most part they move pretty well. And I think our law enforcement officers get a little more training on movement, but that's something I think that is really sorely lacking in the private citizen space.
Boy, isn't it? Okay. Let's talk about the movement pattern here, right? So there are some best practices that we can see here. Move your feet. That's the big one, right? If a guy with a knife, I would not let him get close if you can. You want to maintain space. But of course, these officers are trying to get between him and all of these private citizens who they are sworn to protect their community. So they're trying to compress that space to get between him. So it's kind of competing stuff here. Now watch what happens as he compresses that space. As he charges the officer here who is farthest to the left at this time. I'm going to stop it 1.5 seconds later from when we get it going. And once that does happen, I want you to see how close the guy gets. He gets right on top of him. You can see here he has covered the entire distance, even with the officer moving his feet in 1.5 seconds. So what does that mean for us? I think one of the lessons, it's a very hard one if you haven't done it in person a bunch, Steph, is not to back up, not to be trying to backpedal, that you want to strafe sideways. Diagonal away is okay too, but strafing sideways, it gives you more time because he has to turn. And I know people think, yeah, but he can just turn while he's doing that and get right to you. But it's surprisingly effective and takes him longer to get to you if you strafe to the side, and that might have given him more time and kept him from falling on his butt like he did here.
And the reason that we don't get a lot of this in the private citizen training space is because it's difficult to do safely and it's difficult to do in a compressed class time frame. But these are things that you can do on your own, particularly if you don't have a live firearm. Get something, get your little Nerf gun with you, get a SIRT pistol, get a blue gun, get something like that, and just practice some of the movement, the drawing and the movement. And you can do so with no risk to yourself, and you can kind of get that ingrained into your little neural pathways there, that I'm going to move sideways, I'm going to do something other than, backpedal and probably fall over. So these are things that we can do even if they're not getting done in your classes. So think about that.
I love that. These are the things that you can practice on your own in your dry fire dojo, in your practice time, that you don't even necessarily need a class for because you've learned the lesson right here. Beautiful. You notice here his backing up also made him fall over, right? It made him trip over his own feet. Very common. As he ends up on his butt. Well, thankfully that got him a little bit away from the guy. I do want to note here, because these officers aren't online, and I get it, it's a very rapidly evolving thing, but because they didn't stay together and they didn't seem to have a plan going in, it was just everybody show up and let's handle the problem. This kind of ends up like a Taliban wedding ceremony here, with everybody just kind of standing around and firing guns towards each other, or at least pointing guns towards each other. And man, backstops change so fast, which is one of those reasons that they say, listen, if you got a gun in your hand, you want to stay online with everybody else who has a gun in their hand, because otherwise you end up pointing guns at each other.
Yeah, and we don't know if any rounds were fired during any of this. We could have missed some through the different frame rates and stuff, but thankfully none of them were hurt. I think from the everyone else point of view, the people standing there, I think it's probably easy to assume that these officers can see that there are people there and that they will try to avoid shooting at them. The problem is our vision doesn't actually work that way. Right now, each one of these officers is focused completely on this guy with the knife. They may not even see the people at all. And particularly as they're moving around and changing their position, they're going to lose track of where those people are and where the safe backstops are. So you can't just assume that because it seems obvious that they'll see you and avoid you, you, they may just physically not be able to do that at all. Another great reason to just get the heck out of there.
Yeah, just get out of the area. I also want to note here that our perp, if he had really been intent on hurting somebody, now he's a deadly threat. I think these officers did 100% good. They did no problem. But if he was really intent on sticking one of these officers, at least 2 of them would have knife wounds, significant knife wounds, okay? This guy was literally trying to die by police officers, is what he was trying to do. He's committing suicide by cop, is what he was doing, and it worked for him. And obviously the officers here did finally get a hit on him and finally put him down. If you go read the news story, 1 shot hit him in the neck. Did an officer mean to hit him in the neck? Absolutely not. You're never going to convince me that that's what he was trying to do. It was lucky. Now, was he aiming at high center chest? Was he inadvertently or inadvisedly trying for a headshot? I don't know. But I think this is a good one.
Yeah, and you notice that now our flight people are just going about their day and going to get on their flight. You don't want to see this if you can avoid it. So again, just another good reason to get out of the danger zone as quickly as possible. So whether you are the one that is in the defensive encounter or the one that might be sitting there watching from the sidelines, make sure you know your role and know what to do so that you can cover your ass.